In this week's Buzzboard, 2 new candidates for the GOP.
I'm ready to do this again.
I'm a candidate for the Republican nomination for President of the United States.
And after their announcements, Rick Santorum edges out George Pataki in our Facebook Centimeter. The packed field bunched at the top. Bush, Carson, Huckabee, Rubio, and Walker in a 5-way tie. And Rand Paul did his best to break from the pack with this surprising shot at fellow Republicans.
ISIS exists and grew stronger because of the hawks in our party who gave arms indiscriminately, and most of those arms were snatched up by ISIS.
And we are joined now by another official candidate, Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson, thank you for joining us this morning. What did you make of those comments by Rand Paul blaming Republicans for the growth of ISIS?
That certainly would not be my take on it. I believe that, we kind of stirred things up when we went in there. But we stirred them up even worse when we left there and left an unstable situation.
Yeah, you have said you wouldn't have gone into Iraq in the first place. So I was wondering if there is a Carson doctrine on when you would use force as president and when you wouldn't. What conditions must be met before Commander-in-Chief Ben Carson would send American troops into harm's way?
Well, clearly it has to be in the interest of America and the American people. In that particular case back in 2003, I didn't see that necessarily as being in our interest. I do, however, see what's going on now as being in our interest, because as ISIS is growing and some of the other radical jihadists, their intention is to destroy us and our way of life. And that's a very different situation.
Would you go as far as other Republicans like Senator Rick Santorum, former senator, who told me this week he would put 10,000 troops on the ground?
I believe if that was necessary, I would not hesitate to do that, but I would do that in consultation with some of our top military people who I think have been, to some degree, disregarded.
You also see Senator Rand Paul taking action today to stop the Patriot Act and the bulk collection of Americans' phone records. Where do you stand on that? Would you continue the program if you were president?
Well, I certainly believe that there is a correlation between some of the steps that have been taken since 9/11 and the fact that we've not had other major insults. Having said that, I think we really have to protect the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, and there are aspects of the Patriot Act, such as the massive metadata collection, which I think probably are not necessary. The data is already...
So you support Rand Paul on this?
No. The data is already collected, and I think that's good by the phone companies. And we have a process whereby a warrant can be gotten if one is suspicious.
Okay, and I want to ask you also about this, your kind of surprise rise in the polls right now. We just showed that poll, the Quinnipiac poll this week, showing you tied for first place nationally. You're also doing quite well in Iowa. You also won the straw poll at the Southern Republican Leadership Conference just last week. So do you consider yourself a front runner now, and how are you going to build on it?
Whether I'm a front runner or not doesn't matter. What matters is that the people themselves are starting to listen and evaluate for themselves rather than listening to what people say I said and what people say that I meant. And that's a good thing, because this country is really centered around the people. They're supposed to be at the pinnacle. They're not supposed to be manipulated by pundits and various people who tell you, this is the person, this is the one you need to listen to. And I think that's very encouraging.
And you're starting to believe you can be president?
I certainly believe that that is a possibility. Obviously, that will be left up to the people after they have an opportunity to listen carefully to the plans of everybody involved. And I think we should listen to everybody involved and evaluate for ourselves with our superior intellect who is the person who best represents us.
You're doing something unusual for a declared candidate for president, continuing to give paid speeches. That could raise some legal questions if the speeches support your campaign in any way. So how are you going to keep that from happening? What safeguards are you going to put in place? And have you considered stopping those paid speeches?
Certainly, I was asked by some political people to just cancel those speeches. I only have about 4 left, and I had hundreds of speeches. But, when people have gone through a lot of trouble getting sponsors and selling tables and what have you, you don't just walk out on them. I think that is horrible. And, when it comes to giving back charitable donations, I would match myself against anybody.
So after those 4 speeches, you'll probably stop?
I haven't accepted any paid speeches for many, many months, and I won't be accepting any others.
Dr. Carson, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.